you mentioned that you have an affinity for Dena for a variety of reasons, but you particularly because of your own family's heritage,
Right.
and how it parallels hers. Talk a
Right.
little bit about that.
Well, like Dena, my forebears came from Poland and from Ukraine. Jewish folks who came, Eastern European Jewish people, Ashkenazi Jews, who came from Poland and from Ukraine. My grandma, Lena, my maternal grandmother, Lena Moldetsky, she's the only one in my family who came from Ukraine. Everybody else came from Poland. She was born in 1903, came over here a few years later, brought over by her dad, who came first to New York City, and then brought the rest of the family over. And her, she came from a very serious working class family. I mean, they, like the classic Fiddler on the Roof story, they they left Ukraine because of persecution. Her father's family were from Kishinev, which had the great pogrom back, I forget, like in the early 1900s, and most of his family were killed in that pogrom. He himself, it was very interesting, I just have to tell us, he himself was drafted into the Tsarist army when he was very young. And for young Jewish men to be drafted into the Tsarist army was tantamount to a death sentence. Many families sat Shiva, which is the mourning period, when the son went off to the army. So my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my grandmother's father, he managed to get smuggled out of the army camp and go over the border to Turkey, and then came to New York City. And he was a kosher butcher and organized the first kosher butchers union. Now, my grandmother, she, like Dina's mother, she began work very, very early on, like when she was 12 or 13 years old. She got her first job. And she loved telling me the story of how she got her first job. She went looking for different sweatshops, and she comes to one sweatshop where she sees this big sign saying, "No Jews need apply." And so my grandmother decided, I'm going to check this out. So she waited online. There's a long line of people applying for the job. She finally came to her turn. She goes up to the general manager, and she says, "My name is Lena Moldetsky. I'm a Jew, and I'm going to tell you why you're going to hire me." So, when I read Dina's biography of her mom, I saw parallels as far as it goes. My mother, well, actually, back with my grandmother married a young man, Solomon Schwartz, which in Hebrew is Shlomo. That's where I get my name from, because we always name people who died so that the name goes on in the family. We don't name people after living people. So my grandfather died shortly before I was born. And he was a socialist. I also suspect that he was maybe a communist or a communist fellow traveler, because my grandmother once showed me a membership card of an organization he belonged to, which was the International Workers' Order, which was a parallel organization that the Jewish communists established in the 1920s. It was parallel to the Arbeiterring, the workmen's circle, which was established by the socialists and the anarchists. So he was a member of that. He was a member of the International Workers' Order, the parallel organization. So I kind of suspect that was the case. Also, he was during World War II. They moved. My maternal grandparents moved from Brooklyn to Trenton, New Jersey, to work in the GM factory there. And my grandfather became a organizer for the United Auto Workers. And he organized the first slate for union office, comprised of a Jew, a Catholic, or actually different, because there's different ethnic group, Polish, Irish, Italian, and an African American. So I kind of suspect that he was a fellow traveler, if not an actual member of the party. My grandmother, though, she was more like a union social democrat. She voted the way the union told her. She supported the Democratic Party. She voted the way the union told her.
Well, one of the great mysteries, of course, is why Dena was so drawn
Right.
to tell the African American story.
Right.
When at a time when it was not even considered worth studying,
Right.
that there was no story.
Right.
And I've often wondered whether it had to do with her immigrant past, with her being a woman, with her mother being a Hull House girl who
Right.
infused all of these progressive ideas, anti-war, women's voting rights,
Right.
union thought. Do you have any thoughts about that? Whether
I actually have been thinking a lot about that. As we've been discussing, I mean, like I said, reading her biography of her mom, I saw many, many parallels. Not only to my own family, but also back in the 70s. I was very active in the anarchist movement, and I was working with older Jewish and Italian anarchists who were all immigrant workers, and the Jewish workers. The Jewish anarchist workers were all Yiddish-speaking Jews from Eastern Europe. So it was very interesting for me to see the parallels again between these, especially the women, like Esther Dagoff, and so many other women who were, again, they were what we call Frabente. They were firebrands. Sorry. I get emotional when I think about them.
what are you feeling?
You know, it's just that these people were like my grandparents. Give me a second to conclude myself. Oh, I'm sorry. No.
These people were what?
Like my grandparents.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, my grandmother was very jealous that I was hanging out with them.
What are you feeling emotionally about the work they did, the sacrifices?
The work, the sacrifices. Yeah, all the above as far as that goes. Because they had immigrant workers. We don't tend to realize this now. I mean, we're all descendants of immigrants, different times, different places. But we don't really sometimes fully appreciate what immigrant workers went through. Coming to a strange land, not speaking the language, and working, especially in the urban situation, working in sweatshops. Horrible, horrible situations.
Tell me about your own musical background, why you are interested in this stuff.
Right.
Make it fairly brief.
Oh, sorry.
But ultimately want to, with the idea of why you become so passionate about the African roots.
Right. Well, I think like a lot of banjo players, old-time musicians, I became interested in when I first started learning the banjo back when I was a teenager back in Jersey. The first book I had was Pete Seeger's How to Play the Five-String Banjo. But what's interesting about that book was, in the back, he had interesting references to African American music in general. One of the things was the painting The Old Plantation. That's the first time I saw the painting. And I was fascinated by that. And also he had interesting little drawings. Like he had this one drawing of a three-string African instrument that looked like the accountant. At that time, nobody knew what it was, or he didn't identify it other than to say that it was from Senegal. These things fascinated me, so I wanted to learn more about them. So, and at the same time, I was becoming an old-time musician, getting more involved in that. Homiloo, playing fiddle and banjo and whatnot, busking on weekends. We'd go in the street corners in Brooklyn and Manhattan, playing street corners for tips. Going to festivals in the summertime, like Brandywine. Parties all the time. So that was my college, because I didn't go to college. So my university was the old-time community. My classroom was the street.
What period of time we're talking about?
I started playing old-time music in the late 70s. Okay. And that's when I first got the how to play the.
What prompted you to pick up the banjo?
I started off playing guitar first. I was basically, because I was a lefty, I was a folkie. So, I knew all the labor songs, and I knew all the, the civil rights songs and all that kind of stuff. But the thing was, I really, here in New York City, or in the metropolitan area, I should say, because I was growing up in New Jersey, right across the river, here we had great radio stations, college radio stations that had old-time music on. Moonshine in the Morning and various other type of radio shows. And they played old 78s. And what I used to do was, I didn't have audio equipment. I just had like a crummy little turntable and a crummy little cassette player. So what I would do, recorder, so what I would do is take my crummy little cassette recorder and shove it up against the radio. And that's where I first learned my first tunes and stuff. But then I quickly, here in New York City, Doug Tuchman used to run a old-time and bluegrass string band contest at what used to be South Street Seaport. Now it's like this mega mall. But it would just really appear at that time. And he would every summer he would do that. And that's where I first met many of the people that I still play with to this day, who are my friends that still play with today. And this was back in 76, 77. 77, I went to, in the fall of 77, I went to live in Israel for a year, came back, and while I was in Israel, one of the guys I was on kibbutz with was a guy from California who made his own banjo. And that fascinated me. He did a really nice job of it, too. And I was very, very interested. Also, I was on a program, an old-time program for new immigrants, basically intensive Hebrew language program. So one of my roommates was this little French guy who played the banjo. He didn't bring his banjo with him, but he took my guitar and just would tune it to an open G tuning. And so these two guys were like my influences and the ones who got me really interested in the banjo. Came back and immediately, got involved in the old time scene and got myself a cheap banjo and goes from there. Whining boy. I'm a whining boy, don't deny my name. I'm a whining boy, don't deny my name, don't deny my name. I'm a whining boy, don't deny my name. shaking like a sweet staving chain. I'm a wandering boy, don't deny my name. Mama, mama, take a look at sis. Mama, mama, take a look at sis. Take a look at sis. Oh, my mama, take a look at sis. She's out on levee doing the winding twist. I am a